Hello, I'm Jessica Keegan, and I'm glad to be back with you to talk about our One Book, One Oceanside Summer Read Contender. This summer, one of our choices may be The Fingertips of Duncan Dorfman by Meg Wolitzer. And if these look like Scrabble tiles to you, you're on to something. If you're a Scrabble player, you might recognize that. Duncan is one of the characters in our book, and he has a very interesting special power that brings him to end up at the National Scrabble Tournament eventually, where his life collides with two other characters, April and Nate. And as these characters' lives collide, some of their challenges and some really interesting things start to happen for them and their friendships and their lives. So I'm going to be reading the first chapter of this book, and you may want to choose this book to read with our community this summer for our One Book, One Oceanside Reads. So here we go, the first chapter of The Fingertips of Duncan Dorfman. Chapter 1. On the night before his first day at his new school, in the small, squirrel-colored living room of his great-aunt's house, Duncan Dorfman's mother warned him not to show anyone his power. "Whatever you do, Duncan, keep it to yourself," she said. "If you don't, I'm afraid something bad will happen." He had no idea why she was so worried. It wasn't as if people ever paid that much attention to him. In his last school, Duncan hadn't stood out in any way. He'd made a few friends, though no one who would particularly miss him now that he'd moved away. Besides, it wasn't as if the thing he could do was even useful. "It's not a power," Duncan told his mother as they sat in the living room that night. She was laying out his clothes for school, which embarrassed him because he was 12, not 5. "A power," he said, "is when you can lift a car off a baby or save the planet from destruction, that kind of thing." "Then what would you call it?" his mother asked. She smoothed the creases on the ugly mustard yellow shirt she had bought for him with her employee discount at Thrifty Mike's warehouse. "I don't know." What did you call the thing he could do? It didn't have a name, but he didn't want to upset her, so he promised that whatever the thing was, he would keep it to himself. A week earlier, the two of them had gotten on a bus in Michigan with several suitcases and taped up cartons, and they had traveled for 9 hours. At some point, the bus stopped at a bad-smelling rest stop, and Duncan and his mother got out and bought French fries that seemed to have been cooked in oil left over from an ancient civilization. And then they got back on the bus, and both of them gratefully closed their eyes, their heads knocking together occasionally in sleep. Finally, they arrived in Drilling Falls, Pennsylvania, the town where Duncan's mother had grown up. There was nothing exciting about Drilling Falls, and she had said she didn't have many happy memories of growing up there. But they had nowhere else to go. She had lost her job as the manager of a gift shop in Michigan, and when his great-aunt heard this, she had invited them to come live with her. Aunt Juna was a box-shaped old woman who wore a green sweater over her shoulders and who, as she liked to tell people, never ate anything with a face. You would walk into the front hall and a yam or bean aroma would hit you, the same way the smell of a brownie mix or roast chicken would float your way in other houses. His mother often said, "We should be very grateful to Aunt Juna. We should kiss the ground she walks on. She gave us a home and found me a job." Thanks to Aunt Juna, Duncan's mother now worked at Thrifty Mike's warehouse, a superstore with bins of random items like AA batteries and pig-shaped staplers. Though very few people had spent any time with Thrifty Mike himself, he was real. He was a real 30-year-old man named Mike Scobie, who lived in the rich section of Drilling Falls. Duncan had heard him described as an eccentric millionaire who wore high-top sneakers and ate junky cocoa and marshmallow-flavored cereal for breakfast. No one really knew much else about him because he only came to the store once in a while, very late at night, when no one was there except the security guards. He wasn't supposed to be good with people, and so he stayed away during the day. "That's fine with me," Duncan's mother had said. "I don't need to see him." The employees at Thrifty Mike's wore red smocks with name tags that read, "I'm Thrifty Sue," or "I'm Thrifty Pete," or in Duncan's mother's case, "I'm Thrifty Caroline." Caroline Dorfman was a nice person, pretty, blonde-haired, and funny, but she worried all the time, mostly about Duncan. She'd raised him all by herself because his father, Joe Wright, had died of a rare disease called penosis before Duncan was born. "It was very sad," she would say quietly, but she didn't like to say too much else about it. All Duncan knew was that his parents had been young when he was born, and they hadn't been married. That was about the extent of his knowledge. Duncan's mother got migraine headaches when she was under stress. Usually right before the headache came on, her vision would be clouded with a silvery light she called an aura. The next thing Duncan knew, she would say, "Oh no, another aura. I'm sorry, Duncan. I'll see you later, okay? Make yourself a PB&J for lunch, and we have plums." Then she'd go into her bedroom and lie in the dark until the migraine passed. Over the years, Duncan had brought up the subject of his father less and less often because he knew it really upset her. Just like now, when she asked Duncan not to show anyone his so-called power, he knew he should do what she wanted, or else she might get agitated. The only reason Duncan had shown it to her in the first place was that it had taken him by surprise. He had been in his new bedroom 2 days earlier, sitting on the bed, flipping through an old book, something dumb about a kid named Jimmy who builds a rocket ship with his best friend and a gopher, when suddenly Duncan discovered that he could do the strangest thing. It had shocked him. So he'd gone out into the hallway where his mother was unpacking boxes from the move and said to her, "Mom, check this out." That was his first mistake. I'm going to stop there. That's part of Chapter 1 of The Fingertips of Duncan Dorfman by Meg Wolitzer. Be sure to give it your vote if you'd like this to be our One Book, One Oceanside summer read this summer. Happy reading for the end of the school year and all throughout the summer, and we look forward to reading with you and talking with you, hopefully, at our library book discussion this summer. All right, thanks.